If you're pouring your heart into your podcast, but still struggling to turn those listeners into paying clients, I've got something just for you. Imagine having a clear, simple plan to turn your listeners into buyers without relying on a huge audience or spending hours on social media. That's exactly what we'll create together in a podcast profit plan discovery call. During this free 20-minute call, I'll help you discover more opportunities for profit in your podcast and give you the next best step to turn your show into a client attracting machine. If I've got an offer that will help you expedite this process, then we can also discuss working together. Book your free podcast profit plan discovery call now by going to podcastingformoms.co/profit plan or by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to chat with you. You started a podcast, or maybe you're planning to start one. Either way, at some point you probably thought, okay, I'm going to record episodes, hit publish, and the clients are just going to come rolling in. And then they didn't. Not because your podcast is bad or that your voice is bad, but because a podcast alone is not a business strategy. But a podcast connected to a system, that is a business strategy. So today I'm going to walk you through the podcast ecosystem that every mom entrepreneur needs. The full picture of what has to exist around your show for it to actually make you money. Let's get into it. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Soneson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, and welcome back to Podcasting for Moms. I'm Jenny, and this is a show where we talk about using your podcast as your primary marketing channel so that you can grow your business, make money, and stop white knuckling it on social media. If you're new here, hi, I am so glad you found me. And if you've been around for a while, you already know that I don't do fluffy podcasting advice. Everything that we talk about here is connected to your actual business goals. In today's episode, it's probably one of the most important ones that I've ever done. Because I talk to mom entrepreneurs every single week who are doing the work, they're showing up, they're recording, they're publishing, and then they're frustrated because they're not seeing results. And almost every single time, it is not a content problem. It is an ecosystem problem. So let's fix that and let's get into the episode. So first, let's start with what even is a podcast ecosystem? So here's how I define it. A podcast ecosystem is the connected set of elements that work together to take someone from discovering your show to becoming a paying client or customer. Notice that I said connected. That is the key word here. Each piece has a job, and each piece hands off to the next. A solo podcast episode floating around with no path forward, that's not an ecosystem, that's just content. But a podcast episode that drives listeners to a lead magnet, gets them on your email list, nurtures them towards an offer, and eventually converts them into a buyer, that is an ecosystem, and that's what we're building today. So there are 5 components that I want you to think about, and I'm walking you through all of them today. So stay with me because every single one of them matters. So the first component is the show itself. Okay, so obviously you need a podcast, but I want to say something that might be a little uncomfortable. The show is actually the least complicated part of this, and yet it's the part that most people obsess over. They're fussing over their microphone, they're tweaking their cover art, they're worrying about whether their intro is too long or not. Meanwhile, they have zero strategy for what happens after someone hits play. So here's the job of your show. The job of your show is to attract the right listener, demonstrate your expertise, and create enough trust that someone is ready to take the next step with you. That's it. Every episode should do at least one of those 3 things, but ideally all 3. And the way that you make that happen is by being strategic about your content, not just picking topics that feel fun or sound cute. Every episode should connect back to your offers, your listeners' transformation, and the path that you want them to walk. If you're not thinking about your episodes that way yet, then that is your first ecosystem fix. Then we have the second component, which is discoverability. So you can have the best podcast on the internet, and it means exactly nothing if no one is able to find it. So discoverability is how new listeners land on your show in the first place, and there are a few channels that matter here. So the first one is podcast SEO. So your episode titles are searchable. Platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify both function like search engines. So if your titles are cute but vague, then you are absolutely invisible. You need to be thinking about the words that your ideal listener actually types when they're looking for help. Something like how to start a podcast as a mom entrepreneur is going to get found, whereas something like the magic of showing up is not going to get found. The second component of discoverability is your show description. So this is your sales copy inside the podcast apps. Most people bury the good stuff 5 sentences in. So I want you to lead with the transformation. Who is the show for and what does it help them do? That needs to be the very first thing someone reads in your show description. And then the third and final thing here is cross-promotion and being a guest. So getting on other people's shows is still one of the fastest ways to grow your own podcast. When you're a guest, you borrow someone else's audience, and you want those listeners coming back to a show that's clearly built for them. So discoverability is what fills the top of your ecosystem. Without it, everything else is built for an audience that just never arrives. Then we have the third component, which is the lead magnet. And this is the bridge between your podcast and your email list. And it might be the most underutilized part of the entire ecosystem for mom entrepreneurs. So here's the problem. You put out a great episode, someone listens, they're nodding along, they love everything you're saying, but then they close the app and they forget that you exist. Not because they didn't care, but because life happened. Their kid needed a snack, they got a work email, and the moment just passed. So a lead magnet gives them a reason to take action right now while they're still in that I love this content moment. It's a free resource, whether that's a checklist, a guide, a mini training, a private podcast series that solves one specific problem for your listener and gets them onto your email list in exchange. And yes, I said email list, not something like follow me on Instagram, an actual email list, because social media followers are borrowed. Your email list is yours. So when you have someone's email, you can reach them directly. You're not fighting an algorithm. You're not hoping that they see your stories. You have direct access to them. So your lead magnet is what converts a casual listener into a real lead. Every show needs one, and it needs to be mentioned consistently, not just once, not just in your show description, but woven into your actual episodes where it makes sense. Then we have the fourth component, which is the email list and nurture sequence. So getting someone onto your email list is just step one. Step two is actually showing up in their inbox in a way that builds the relationship and moves them toward buying. And this is where a lot of people drop the ball. They put up a lead magnet, people opt in, and then crickets. Or they send one email and then they ghost their list for 3 weeks. Your email list is where the real relationship building happens. It's where you get to show up in a more personal, direct way than you can on a podcast, and it's where you make offers. You need, at a minimum, a welcome sequence, and that's a series of emails that someone gets automatically when they join your list. These emails should introduce you, deliver the value that you promised, establish what they can expect from you, and ideally start warming them up toward your paid offers. After that, you should be sending regular emails, at minimum weekly, and these continue to build the trust, teach, and connect your listeners and subscribers back to your episodes and your offers. Your podcast and your email list are meant to work together in a loop. So here's kind of what that looks like. Episode goes out, listeners opt in for the lead magnet, emails go out, subscribers come back to listen to more episodes, the trust deepens, and then they buy. That loop is your business. Don't break it by ghosting your list. And then lastly, we have component 5, which is the offer or offer suite. So everything in the ecosystem exists to eventually lead here, which is a paid offer. And I want to be really clear about something. A podcast is not a business. A podcast is a marketing tool for a business. I guess it could be a business if you have like ads and things like that. But if you're listening to the show, you want your podcast to be a marketing asset for your business, not your entire business. So the goal of all this, your show, the discoverability, the lead magnet, and the email list is to move the right people towards making a purchase. That means that you need to know what you're selling, and it needs to be clear, not 5 things at once or a vague work with me page. You want a clear, specific offer that solves a specific problem for a specific person. Now, you can absolutely have multiple offers at different price points, but there should always be one primary offer that you're driving toward at any given time. And your content, your emails, your podcast episodes, they should all be connected to that one thing. This is the part that makes your podcast profitable, not the downloads or the listener count, but the pathway from listener to buyer. And here's what I want you to remember. You don't need a massive audience to make real money from your podcast. I have clients who have made multiple 5 figures from their show with just a few hundred listeners. Why? Because they had an ecosystem. The right people were finding them, getting onto their email list, being nurtured, and converting. Downloads are vanity, whereas strategy is money. Okay, and I know I said 5 components, but I do want to add a bonus because it's that important and because you're a mom running a business on limited hours, so you need this. Once you have your ecosystem set up, then repurposing is what creates sustainability. Every episode you record is not just an episode. It becomes an email, a Threads post, an Instagram caption, a Pinterest pin, a blog post. It's a piece of content that can drive traffic back to your show and your offers across multiple platforms without you having to create from scratch every single time. That is how you build a content machine without burning out. You create once and distribute many times. Your podcast episode is the anchor and everything else flows from it. That is the difference between a podcast that runs you into the ground and one that actually supports your life. Okay, so let's put it all together. The 5 components of the podcast ecosystem every mom entrepreneur needs. 1, the show. So strategic content that builds trust and connects to your offers. 2, discoverability. Podcast SEO, optimized descriptions, and getting on other shows so that the right people can actually find you. 3 is the lead magnet. This is the bridge from casual listener to email subscriber. 4, the email list and nurture sequence. So this is the relationship building engine that converts subscribers into buyers. And 5, the offer, the thing that you're actually selling, because a podcast without an offer is just a hobby. And the bonus one is repurposing, because content should work harder than you do. So when all 5 of these things are connected and working together, that is when podcasting becomes the most powerful marketing channel you've ever used. And it's absolutely possible to do all of this while running a business in the margins of mom life, which, by the way, is kind of my specialty. So speaking of that, if you listen to this episode and you're thinking, this makes so much sense, but I have no idea how to actually put it all together for my specific business, I want to tell you about the Podcast Profit Blueprint. This is my private podcast series that walks you through exactly how to build this ecosystem inside of your own business. It's not a fluffy overview. It's the actual strategy, the actual steps, and the actual framework that I use with my clients and inside my own business. So if you're ready to stop winging it and start building a podcast that works, I want you to head to podcastingformoms.co/profit and grab the Podcast Profit Blueprint. I will also have it linked in the show notes for you. All right, that is a wrap on today's episode. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to share it with a mom entrepreneur friend who needs to hear it, because honestly, this is the conversation I feel like more people need to be having around podcasting. I'll see you next week, but until then, keep showing up, keep being strategic, and remember that your podcast is supposed to work for you, not the other way around. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.